Today we are unlocking one of the most powerful features in Python, and that is list comprehension. It lets you write shorter, cleaner and faster code. Let's break down how it works behind the scenes and why it's so useful. So let's take an example. First we are gonna have a list called numbers, and there we are gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Okay, and now let's say we want to get the squares of each number. So for that, instead of bigger loops, we can write a sweeter and shorter list comprehension. So in list comprehension, what it would be x exponentiation 2. So we want to do mathematical square, and then we write the for loop. So I'm gonna write for x in numbers. So here we have 5 numbers in this numbers list. As you can see, this for loop, it will run 5 times, and in each iteration it will put the value from this list one by one. So in the first iteration, x will hold the value 1, then 2, then 3, then 4 and then 5. And in each iteration, when x will hold, for example, 2 or 1, it will do 1 square, 2 square, 3 square, like this, and it will store each iteration's value as a list inside this square variable. Okay, so if I write the print statement and pass squares and save and run the code, you'll see it prints 1 square, which is 1, then 2 square, which is 4, then 3 square, which is 9, and 4 square 16, 5 square 25. Now this code is equivalent to a loop, and let's see what is that. So instead of these two lines, what you could do is, if you want to avoid list comprehension and just use normal list and a loop, then you can write squares equal empty list, then you can write for x in numbers, and then write squares dot append x exponentiation 2. Then after the loop, you can write the print statement and pass squares to print that. Now if you run the code, you'll see the same output. But as you can see, we are writing 4 lines of code and some methods, but as you can see, we can just do that in a simpler way with list comprehension in just 2 lines. Now let me remove this loop example and uncomment the list comprehension example, and now we can do some filtering with if else as well. So here, after this list comprehension, we can add a logic like this. We can say if x mod 2 equal 0 means every time in every iteration x will have value from this list. In the first iteration it will have the value 1, and in the second iteration it will have value 2, then 3, 4, 5 and so on. So we are telling if x means in the respective iteration, and if we mod that value with 2, and if we get 0 means if that is an even number like 2, 4, 6, then we want to perform this task. Otherwise, we don't want to perform this task. So if it is 1, don't perform this. If it is 2, that means it is even and it fulfills this if logic. So 2 square, that will be 4, where on the code you'll see it prints 4 and 16. When in the first iteration x holds the value 1, this logic gets false, so it does not do 1 square, so it does not add some value to the squares list. But in the second iteration, when 2 is in the x variable, then 2 mod 2 equals 0, so this is true. So we are doing 2 square and storing 4 inside the squares list. Then for 3, this gets false, we do nothing. For 4 mod 2 equals 0, this is true, that means we do 4 square, means 16. So we are storing 16 after 4 in the squares list. For 5, this gets false, and again we do nothing. I hope you understood how we use the if statement. Now we can use if else both in list comprehension. Let's take the numbers list again. Then let's have a variable called result, and there I'm gonna say that this result list should include the x, and we can write the if part before the for loop part as well. So here I can write if x mod 2 equal 0. So if this condition is true, means it is an even number, then we want to put that even number inside the result list. And else, if that is an odd number, we want to put minus x there, means before the odd numbers we want a minus sign. And then we can write the for loop part. So for x in numbers. Okay, so here I missed the x, so we want to store the x if that is an even number, and we want to store that normally. But if that is not the case, means the x is an odd number, then before that number we want a minus sign. Okay, so if I write the print statement and pass result and run the code, you'll see when it is an odd number it puts a minus before that number, but when it is an even number it just puts the even number, does not includes a minus sign. So this was a pretty good example to understand the if else. Now let me remove these and see how nested list comprehension works. So I'm gonna take a variable called matrix, and there we'll have a nested list. In the first nested list we're gonna have 1 2, and in the second nested list we're gonna have 3 4. Now we want to print the flattened data of this list. So for that, we can write flattened num for row in matrix for num in row. Now if I write the print statement and pass flattened and run the code, you'll see it flattens the list. So it converted a 2D list into 1D list. So here we have two loops actually. If you look closely, we are having num stored inside the flattened list, and for outer loop we are checking for row in matrix. So in first iteration this row contains this list, and on this list we perform the nested loop, means for num in this row. Okay, so it prints 1 and 2. Then it again goes to the outer loop, as you can see, for row in matrix. So in the second iteration this list gets inside this row and it goes to the inner loop here, and it takes num from this row and prints 3 and 4. Now let's have our numbers list again, 1 2 3 4 5. Now let's discuss about some common mistakes. So here if I write x for x in numbers, and if x mod 2 equal 0, and let's store this inside the result. Okay, now if you just write the if statement, then you should write this after the for block. Okay, but if you include the else statement as well here, else minus x, this will throw error. So if you intend to use both if and else, you have to cut the for block and put that at the last. You have to write the if else block before the for block. Now if you run the code, okay, I have to print this, print result, run the code, it will work perfectly. Okay, so keep in mind that if you use only if statement, then for block will be before the if block. But if you intend to use the if else both, then the for block would be after them. Let me delete this and let's see how we can work with range as well. For example, we can write a variable called multiples of 3, and let's write x for x in range. Then let's put 1 comma 20 and add a if block, x mod 3 equal 0. So basically everything is same, but instead of the numbers list or any kind of list, we are just passing a range here. As you can see, the for block, the if block, everything is same what you have learned so far in the list comprehension section. So if I write the print statement and pass multiples of 3, run the code, you'll see it prints multiples of 3 like 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 and 18. Now let's have the last example of this video, and that is with strings. So for example, we have words list, and there we have apple and then banana. Now we can have a variable called reversed words, and here what we can do is we can write words, then in square brackets we can do some splitting with -1, and then for word in words, and if I write the print statement and pass reversed words and run the code, instead of apple it prints alpa, means it reversed the string. E was at the last, it put E at the first. L was in the second last, it put in the second position. So it reversed every letter in each word. For banana as well, as you can see. So here this is the loop body, as you can see, the loop, and by this syntax we are doing slicing. This is a shortcut method of slicing that reverses a string. And that was a full deep dive into list comprehension, how it works, when to use it, and how to avoid common mistakes. If this helped you, please like, subscribe and drop a comment below. See you in the next one, and until then, happy coding.